Well, good afternoon, Mr. Lewis. How are you?
Doing pretty well today, Drew. How about you?
I'm doing well. So, we are back with a rebranded podcast that is co hosted by Top Row Racing Media and the National Compact Touring Series. We may tweak the name a little bit so that it includes Top Row Racing Media in it, but that was a 30-second another conversation for another day AI with graphic design there. So,
It's
um,
been very popular again on Facebook today, too.
yes. So, thank you for joining us, Lewis. We talked about this Monday night when I've been doing these
Yeah.
impromptu lives, but we've been discussing about doing a motorsports themed podcast, maybe a little heavy on sport compacts, what other racing related objects too, because at the end of the day, we want to cover everything motorsports to keep our tracks healthy. And that's with one of our guests tonight. We're going to have something that's very familiar to you. Why don't you talk about what we got on tap for tonight? And then before we bring Buju on, then we'll talk about what our plan is for the show. And then we'll just have some fun tonight.
Yeah, absolutely. So, um, obviously, Top Row got it started at South Bend. And so I got a chance to connect with the Davis family pretty early. In fact, they're part of the reasons why the YouTube channel and everything came about, right? So, even, with my new logo, Buju was behind that a lot too. So, that's something that I'm excited for. And um, sometime last year, he had posted a Montville video, right? And so, and watch them like, man, we need more of that, right? Like when I think of Ron Brash and everything Ron has done, it's like we need more Rons, right? We need more people who are going to cover the history of our area. There's when in watching the episodes, I get to watch them second. Brandon gets to watch them first because he makes them, right? So then when I get them, I get to watch them before it goes online. And there's even times I was for the right to race that not we that he did 2 weeks ago now. We were in the hospital with my stepdad, right? And so my mom, she's not into racing as much anymore, but she was listening in. And she said, "Oh, that's really interesting, right?" So that's something that I'd reach out to him after that Montville episode, and I said, "Hey, is this something you'd want to do? Would you like to do as part of Top Row, right? Because it gives him a big platform to build on and get some exposure as he builds what he's doing and his brand, right? So, and something when you have thousands of followers like I do, you can take advantage of that and the reach that I have. So he's very on board with that, right? And so he's a day one follower. I mean, he was there before Top Row, so I'm certainly excited. I get some background in his projects and what he wants to work on, his philosophy. I've known his passion for a long time, so I'm very excited to have him on as our first episode that we dive into this co-hosting. So, you know, I think when people hear his story and just they'll hear the passion that he has for this. I mean, it's not fake. It's not made up. You hear it, it's authentic. Even when you listen, there are people commenting earlier on. I played the Playland Park again, which I knew where it was. I didn't realize how many times I passed it. Right, like when I go to Potawatomi Zoo, like I knew roughly where it was, but I didn't think about it when I'm on my way to the zoo. So it's just something like when you look at the map, you're like, oh, I went over that bridge many times, right, on the way to the zoo, and didn't even really realize that I was passing the grandstands to Playland Park on the way. Um, so it's something when you hear, right, he always has that great ending, where he just makes you go, keep talking. It can't be done yet, right? And so I think that's something that he has the radio voice. I don't. I don't have a radio voice, um, but that's where I'm excited to get more into what he's doing.
No, absolutely. So, to kind of talk about that for one more second. So, there's a lot of racetracks that we are worried about having issues, like the Onaway Dragway, Montville
Yes.
Speedway,
Yep.
South Bend, kind of got a little revival last year. But there's a lot of racetracks that people never knew that existed before all of these tracks that we're so dear about right now. Like, not a lot of people knew that there was an Allegan County or a speedway in Allegan called, I think it was Jones Motor Speedway. It was owned, I think, or tied with the Jones family
Okay.
before they bought Kalamazoo Speedway. Martin or US 131 Dragway had a big half mile that was pretty popular back in the day. Hartford,
Jackson has one.
yep, Jackson. Hartford Speedway was asphalt and closed for
Right.
20 years before they returned it back to dirt. The Kalamazoo County Fairgrounds had a racetrack. I'm sure they raced at Allegan County Fairgrounds. So racing was very popular in the 20s to the 60s, and then we got kind of it's diverse a little bit between the 60s and now. It's still the same culture, but you wouldn't imagine of all the race cars and the moonshiners and stuff like that. So these are the type of conversations we're going to have on this podcast moving forward. Yes, of course, we're going to focus on our brand and your brand a little bit, but we want to make it interesting to everybody. So we're getting a variety of audience. So Lewis and I talked, I think, excuse me, Mondays at 7 o'clock. We're going to try them weekly and see how they go. There might be a Monday that, unfortunately, we just say, hey, we got too much going on. It might be just me or it might be just Lewis for a quick minute. But with that being said, I think we bring our guest on and we learn a lot about it. I learned a lot about the old track at South Bend, and I kind of heard about it. It was very interesting to watch the 15, 20-minute video. So let's bring Brandon on, and I'll let you do the introduction, Lewis.
Right. So part of the Davis family dynasty, down in South Bend, right, we have Brandon Buju here, ready to talk to us about how he came up with the Chronicles. And so, a lot of people who know you know that you race and that you've been in the front wheel drive and everything. But for those who don't, right, we're on a couple platforms right now between Top Row, National Compacts, and Midwest Compacts. There might be some people who don't know who you are. So tell us who you are.
So yeah, Buju, as you said, Brandon Ultsch, but Buju, if like as I said in the video, if you're my grandma or my boss, Brandon, but otherwise Buju. I started going to the races at South Bend and right around 2000, 6, 7 years old, hooked from the first day. My brothers that Andy knows very well, Drew knows very well. I'm gonna call you Andy and Drew interchangeably, probably.
I probably just put Andy on there. So.
But yeah, my brother started racing around 2004, and I was a late bloomer. I waited till I was almost 30 and started about 2020. But I got my start in Hornets at South Bend. Slow start, but finally got to win that first in the rookie year, and it's been an addiction ever since. Moved up to front wheel drives or sport compacts now this year. So yeah, that's my racing career anyway.
And I think I have that first one on video.
You do, yeah. I think you have all of mine, all three of mine at South Bend, yeah.
Yeah.
So you talk about South Bend Motor Speedway. That's where the Davis family has, gotten its teeth into the short track racing. What's your favorite race that you've had at South Bend as a family, or just attending a race or being a part of?
So in 2021, my brother Derek and his son Brendan, my nephew, won the front wheel drive championship and the Hornet championship on the same night. That was a pretty cool moment. It was a tough season, and it was a nice bow on the end of it. It was a really cool night to have both of them celebrating championships.
So the reason I bring up that question is because there's a lot of tie-in from your last, Bullring that you did. Kind of talk about what inspired you to go back and look at the history of that. I never knew there was a NASCAR race held in South Bend.
Yeah.
Fireball Roberts and Lee Petty and all those guys being there. It's kind of cool. Might even be worth just going to the old site and just taking it in.
I recommend it. That's what me and my friends did. When I went and took videos of the grandstands for the video. But it's all in the video, and I recommend you watching that, obviously. But they started racing there as early as 1915, and I had always knew it was there, just being such a race fan in the area. But I feel like all that ever got brought up was the NASCAR race, and that was in 1952. There was 30-something years before that and another 10 years after that never really got talked about, and it's all in the video. So
even with the New Carlisle, if you kind of want to back up even a little bit too, right, you've kind of got a nice little bow tie between, a small area of Northwest Indiana from Playland Park, then on over to New Carlisle. New Carlisle, I think, was like your second episode that you did.
Early.
Even with the quarter midget club, right? A lot of people, we know quarter midgets are huge. A lot of drivers, even at Kalamazoo, with Little Kalamazoo, they've come up the ranks, right? Mini wedges didn't exist at that time. So even with New Carlisle, you had to go in and do a lot of research, and you even connected with the historical society there for a lot of your stuff.
Yeah, I mean, there's almost nothing online about the New Carlisle, the quarter midget club, as you mentioned. I didn't know that existed. My mom grew up in New Carlisle, and she remembered going to the go-kart races as a kid. So that kind of spurred it, and I'd seen a few posts online kind of about it a little bit. You see Ryan Newman, that's where he got his start. You see that mentioned a little bit, but that's about it. So it was literally like Lewis mentioned, Dana Groves from Historic New Carlisle let me dig through the archives that she had on the track, and that's what it was going through notes and old results and programs and stuff like that, and putting together what the track story was to kind of bring it back. Nobody knows the story, so try and tell the track story that isn't going to get told if nobody else does, and I kind of feel like that's my place.
The one thing that you pointed out, with Playland Park, there's nothing there, right, to signify that this was even, truly a historical marker just for South Bend in general, right? Like, even, obviously with the South Bend Cubs, they have the Studebaker stuff over there, and they, kind of keep some of that alive. But there's nothing, on campus, by campus, near campus that even in a historical marker, right? In the quarter midget thing, how many people have passed out of New Carlisle and not even known that something important happened here at some point, right? Like, you can go by Ileana and the sign's still there, which is just frustrating, right? Because it's like, man, they did nothing with that. They found, Ileana bought that, and then they've done nothing with it. It's just sat empty, right? And but at least the sign's there, right? Other places have at least something that kind of still shows a track was there, but a couple of episodes you've done, you kind of look around, you're like, there's nothing to even show that this mattered. This land is something.
Yeah. And I mean, even think back to before social media 10, 15 years ago, how little we have just of that racing that happened then. We all remember it well. We were there. But in 10, 15 years from now, how many people even remember that? So how much has disappeared from the history of the sport? And I'm never going to find it all, but I do enjoy digging through it, and other people seem to enjoy hearing about it. So it's been fun so far.
Yeah, you talk about the one racetrack that got away from the National Compact Touring Series. We had a race at Ileana. It got rained out. I think that is our first or second year. You wouldn't want to know what type of blood we had to sell to get into there. And then we partnered up with the ASA series, or Midwest series that Greg McCarnes did. And Greg had the track race for Memorial Day weekend, and the current track owner just felt like he didn't want to race that day, and that got canceled, and then that's a year that Ileana closed, so we never officially got a race there. I got to see one race there. I went down there with Tony Eldridge and Jason Seltzer. I want to say it was a CRA race, and it was a lot of fun being there, and kind of wish I would have seen some of the history there, but that was the first year I moved to Chicago. I was all excited. I had a race there. I was going to be able to go watch some racing, and then the dang track closed, and misappropriated funds by the city, and it just sits there. Everything got sold off, and it's just a racetrack with no bleachers.
That's one I never made it to all either, and that'll definitely be a future episode. Definitely want to dig into Ileana for sure.
And even so I went to both versions of Ileana, because when I lived in Chicago, I grew up going to Santa Fe Speedway, which is now $1 Million Homes, but at least there they have a historical marker. And then when we moved to Joliet, we went down to Grundy County. That was before Route 66 existed. When we moved from Joliet, the drag strip, just the 2 lanes and 4 light poles are all that existed around a cornfield and everything else. But we went to Ileana a lot, and then that's when we had moved away from Joliet. We learned a lot of Grundy racers went to Ileana because they raced the Sportsman template late models there, right? That was like the last track in Indiana, because then you go to South Bend and they had the wedge nose. So there's like Northwest Indiana, but 2 different late model styles. So as a kid, I'm like, they race like in Illinois, and these look like the dirt late models, right? And so that's something that Ileana, especially after all the renovations, that place it was sparkling new. It raced both in an internal track and then the big track, and those super late models there, watching them go, even the 4-bangers, I forget exactly what they called the division at that time, but even they put on really solid racing. You didn't go and have like a bad night at the track.
Yeah.
That's where, to be honest with you, that's kind of where the National Compact core base started 13 years ago. Ryan Hoffman, Dan Irvine, Mike Richardson, those guys were an integral part in our first season. And, going back to preserving stuff, like you said, Buju, on YouTube and Facebook, I never knew that there was I think they call it Pure Stock TV or something like that. Probably 2006,
Oh, yeah.
2007.
Yeah.
I just came across my YouTube, actually watched the whole season, and never knew that one of my past drivers was a TV star.
Yeah.
It was just,
I haven't watched it, but it's come across on my Amazon Prime. I think I'm gonna have to check it out now.
so that's the cool thing of what you're doing. I mean, what you're doing now is preserve that. 20 years down the road, it's going to be on YouTube. It's going to be on Facebook, and people are going to have the knowledge. As Lewis said, there's not very many Ron Veroshes left. There's not a lot of people around Kalamazoo Speedway that holds the worthless knowledge in my head that I do. And I wish there was somebody, because, the racing past tradition is not what it like.
Yeah.
1990s are not what it's like today. We would love it to be it that way. And but what you're doing is great. So, Lewis, I'm going to kick it back over to you because I'm rambling.
Yeah. So you did your introduction. Kind of give us, what has inspired you? Like, again, I know because you and I have had conversations, right? But those, how many others know those conversations, right? And so it comes down to, what's kind of influenced you to pick the tracks that you have, doing obviously New Carlisle, and then you had your personal trip that you took down to Bowman Gray, right? And then you've done the Right to Race. You've done all these things, and it's like when you get super passionate about something, which you're passionate, right? So that's not a never anytime, right? You're just super passionate. But then, like, what motivates you, or what gets you into, like, this is my episode?
It's really kind of just what gets me excited at that moment. Like you said, the New Carlisle one, the proximity to home, obviously, same with Playland. The connection with my mom to New Carlisle kind of made that cool. The Ryan Newman thing. So it's just kind of finding pieces of stuff. I'm like, wow, this is cool. This is cool. This is interesting. I never knew this. And then I'm kind of building a story in my head as I'm reading things and writing it as I read. And that's kind of how an episode is born. But most of all, I'm trying to make what I would want to watch. And so far, I think it's worked out okay.
Well, it's kind of like, when people ask me, how do I come up with my race coverage, or how did I come up with the how I do things? I mean, you were on the forefront, right? You were pre-Top Row, so you've seen kind of every decision, come about. You've seen the thinking behind each decision, and I'm covering it how what I look for as a race fan, right? I don't go into a specific thing going, oh, I need to do this or I need to do that. It's like, there was not that lane, that wasn't really traveled on. And so that's something that, again, with your episodes, even people, when I was playing it live earlier, they're like, man, thank you for sharing this history. And again, it's like, I think there's people out there who want to know this stuff, but where do you go? So if you want to give some of the background on your resources, again, I know, like we talked about New Carlisle, you went to the Historical Society. Obviously, Jay Freet has been a huge help with on-track design, just with his, knowledge that he's had. So when you're doing these projects, where are you finding all your resources? Who are you asking, for tips and tricks?
So that's very episode to episode too. So what started the whole thing was in the Mottville video. I had found a newspaper archive site, and naturally, the first thing I did is I started punching in racetracks, and there was a lot about Mottville. I was like, okay, this is interesting. I know there's a lot like ownership changes and stuff like that, which to me is really interesting as a racing nerd. So I feel like I didn't know this stuff. Maybe a lot of other people don't. And there's another account going around that was making quick AI videos that was like quick historical facts about racetracks. I was like, I could feel like I could do better than that probably. So I put something together real quick. The Mottville one did really well. And then so like I said, there's newspaper archive sites that I use a lot. Some of those are hard to read and difficult to dig through sometimes because it's old print and it doesn't match well, and that's tough to do. YouTube is a big resource, obviously. Guys around here, like you guys were talking about, Ron Vrash early is an unbelievable encyclopedia for everything around here. Pat York, who I've met through doing these projects, is another great encyclopedia around here. So yeah, a lot of connections I've made, online research, and there isn't, like I said, like the New Carlisle, there isn't a lot out there. So it's really trying to, it's a hard dig sometimes. You really, it's fun.
Well, with
That's
all the
part of the fun.
yeah, well, with all the merging of the newspapers too, right? Like I just learned the other day, I went to read something in the Niles Daily Star, and it's owned by Herald Palladium, and I went, when did that happen, right? Like I don't go to the Herald Palladium too often, which is newspaper at Harbor St. Joe. For those who are like, what's a Herald Palladium? You know, but the Niles Daily Star was the leader of publications, and now it's all under, you know, what the same newspaper who owns the Port Herald Argus and Michigan City Dispatch. I'm like, so some of those archives are behind paywalls. So have you had any stopgaps as like you get on leads and you get all these things and all of a sudden paywall, or you're like, oh, there's a dead end, so now what do I do?
No, for most things I've been, and granted, I'm looking of most of what I've done is fairly a pretty good ways back. So I'm finding older newspaper archives and stuff like that. Maybe something more recent. I've run into something like you did.
Yeah.
But even in my I'm not finding, you know, the South Bend Tribune or the Chicago Tribune or these big newspapers. It's the Napanee Examiner and the South Bend News Times and stuff like this. So like I said, it's a real scrapbook trying to put together a track story sometimes when there's so little to go on.
You know what I truly miss? I miss the Mottville Angel Fire website that had like
Promoters Point.
Promoters Points from 2002. You could, if you're having a bad day, you could just go back and read.
Yeah. Just read Merle's blog.
he was a. You could
Merle was a blogger before bloggers were bloggers.
He was. He was very efficient at it. He was very.
He was.
People give Merle a hard time in Mottville Speedway. He knew his niche, and that's what that's all he wanted to be.
And that's what I say in my Mottville video. I mean, I think it's a perfect statement on what Mottville was. It was its own place, and it was beautiful in its own way.
Well, I'm playing. So earlier I did the live Mottville, and a lot of people, you know, Dave Leonard Jr., a couple others joined in. I think Tommy Thomas was in there, and they were watching, and that was pretty consistent. Like the numbers stayed pretty consistent. And, you know, I'm not looking for anything personally out of those lives, right? Like it's a feature that I have that I can use now, that it's just plain videos, right? Like today was a perfect day outside, but in a couple of days we're getting, 3 to 5 inches of snow, right? So it's like it teased us. Like, you know, I was at the racetrack yesterday. Drew was up at Kalamazoo too for a little bit, and you're standing there like, okay, let's get race cars. It's 60 degrees, and sunny, and then you see weather, and you're like, well, never mind, don't get race cars yet, right? But it's one of those things that, you know, with your episodes, right, it takes people to the past with, you know, the live now, playing the Mottville. You know, people enjoy watching those kind of things, and I sit back and I get to watch Rodney Russell race again, right? We lost him a few years ago. And there's a big race on June 13th at Galesburg for him. And, but you get to see drivers who don't race anymore, right? Like I watch some of the South Bend videos, and you're like, man, you know, this lineup would be way different now today than even 5 years ago. And, you know, when Top Row started. So, so when you think of the episodes that you've done, especially since you get to flash back, what one did you dislike? And I dislike not as, you know, as in like, dislike hate, but one that you just got frustrated with, where you just felt like roadblock after roadblock creatively, to one that just kept you motivated and going and super excited, and I can't wait for people to watch this one.
So the most difficult one was definitely the Playland one. Me and Lewis talked about it a couple times, where I had writer's block several times on the project. I was just making it too big, and then I'd shrink it down too far, and then too big again. And then the research aspect of it, obviously, once I connected with Jay Freet and got some more not recent, but 50s and 60s articles instead of 20s and 30s that I was getting on newspaper archives, that helped a lot. That kind of made it flow a little easier. And I sat on it for a while, reread it, and I was like, then kind of condensed it down and made it the video that you see today. The easiest, or one that I was most motivated on, that's kind of tough. I guess it would probably be the Right to Race one, just because I was so fired up about what it's about.
Yeah, and that's something that, again, you're in Indiana, right? Drew and I are in Michigan, so our state's looking a little different when it comes to right to race, getting that law going, and obviously we have tracks that are fighting the fight now, but that's something that with Indiana, I'm actually going to be down at the promoters workshop. I think it's Thursday, March something, first week of March, where I was invited by New Paris to go down and do that, and I'm excited for that. I kind of knew the background. Leaving PRI, I got a phone call from Tracy to say, hey, we were thinking, right? And so I'm really excited to be a part of that, right? Because it's something that, my goal, I want people in the seats. I want them watching my videos, but I don't want them watching my videos when I'm at the track, right? Like, I want people at the track. Hopefully it's like the appetizer to bring people in. So I'm definitely excited, right? Because that's something in Indiana, it's perfect timing because you can get people really motivated, like that call to action. And so, what are you hoping, we're all advocates, right, of racing, what are you hoping to, in your part, what are you looking forward to do for like that right to race, to make that so you get people to be like, this is something we need?
I think it's just making people realize that something has to happen. I mean, we've talked about it all episode here. Racetracks are disappearing pretty quick.
Yep.
At one point across the United States and Canada, there were 6,400 racetracks. There's not that many anymore. So it's kind of, I just want to motivate people to, we have an opportunity to do something for once. That doesn't happen very often. So we should probably use this to get some. This is a maybe not permanent, but this is a pretty solid thing we can get done. This is a legal action protecting racetracks, which is pretty rare. So if it's something we can do, we need to do it.
Well, and the governor was Drew and I were at the PRI show for the keynote, and the governor was there. I mean, he was there on stage, did a little talk. He seemed excited to be there. I don't know. Maybe it was a political thing where he's in front of thousands of people from across the nation. So you got to look a little different, but he's really motivated with the Chicago Bears, right? So maybe he'll be really motivated, for racing too, especially with Indianapolis, right in the backyard, right in Speedrome, right in the backyard, Lucas Oil, right in the backyard. So hopefully, that's something that, again, I'm excited, and honored that I was asked, how I could help and that. And so, I'm in Michigan, but obviously I covered tracks in Indiana, and I want to see them succeed too. So that right to race, that one was probably one of the more popular ones other than Montville and Playland. And, that's getting out too, because a lot of people didn't know it, right? Like I said, I go to Potawatomi Zoo and gone over that bridge how many times and didn't realize the grandstands are literally right there.
Yeah, and that right to race video, I mean, I did that on my other platforms. I posted on Twitter and YouTube, and I got reactions from Mark Martin and Dale Earnhardt Jr. and Matthew Dillner from Flow Sports. So, I mean, it resonates with people, so probably should do something.
I think that's it, right? Like, you got to get people to do it.
Yeah.
Just say it, right?
Yeah.
Like, sometimes that's the harder part. Is it's easy on social media to add a comment. Sometimes they
hit a button, share,
but now you got to go do something with that information, right? You can't. Social media is not going to do it. You got to go beyond. You can use your phone to message your representative and all that, But
I did it all from my phone. It's very easy. You can use ChatGPT to type up a message for you.
Well, we got an opportunity here. If you want to ask a question for Buju or Lewis on this topic, just drop them in the comments. I'm learning as we're going. I forgot we can do stuff like this. So thank you, Leah, dropping a comment here for Hartford Speedway. We really appreciate Leah and Tim. But if you have a comment or a question, drop them for Buju in here, and we want to make this as interactive as we can.
Did we tell Leah yet that she's going to be on an episode at some point, that she doesn't get like a vote? Did we tell her?
She's all for it. I'll give you money if you get Tim on it. I've only seen Tim on one podcast, and I think that was the one up north, Horsepower Happenings. I think he called in. It wasn't a video podcast.
And I know Leah did the Women's Motorsports Network. I know she did that one, so we can get her on ours. But speaking of, I know Buju and I have talked about doing like a Hartford episode, just because how many people, like, I didn't know it was asphalt until my mom, told me that it was asphalt, because when she was in high school and all that it was asphalt at that time. So that's something that we have talked about doing, like a Hartford episode.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm really what is it, the chaos race that they run at their Night of Destruction?
The Race of Doom.
Race of Doom. I would love to make a video specifically on that. Obviously on the track as a whole, but I think that'd be
that
really
was
fun.
my first million. I want to say one of my first videos, clips that got a million on that. I'd send it to Leah all the time. Did you see the latest? Right, because that was pretty exciting to see that something so so local went so big. But before we get too down the rabbit hole there, someone did ask like favorite racetrack. So I'm assuming they're asking you. But I mean, Drew, I mean, you and I, we can answer that too. It's not like it's a big thing. But let's start with our guest.
So I'm biased. I grew up at South Bend Motor Speedway. That's always going to be near and dear to my heart, and probably always going to be my answer for favorite racetrack. But I will say that I went to Eldora for the first time this year. I've never really been a big dirt fan, as big as a race fan as I am. I never really got into the dirt side, and I went to Eldora for the Dream Weekend warm up on Friday, and it blew my mind. I love Eldora. I named my dog after the racetrack.
Yep, and I see both. So that's something that I always tell people. When I got invited to Springport in 2022, I'd always thought about going. I used to have monthly meetings when I was on a board in Lansing, and I thought on my way home every now and then, just stop by Springport. Stop by Springport. It's like 30 miles off the highway, but it's go and do it. And so I don't know what it is. I think you should watch the YouTube videos on Springport, Buju, because they're pretty awesome. It goes from the start, from groundbreaking to their first event. Yeah. There's 3 series, and I love Springport, but my next favorite, Plymouth Dirt Track in Sheboygan, Wisconsin. It's surrounded by homes. The track was built, I want to say, in 2005 at the fairgrounds there. So all the homes were there before it, and you get there and it looks like a big tailgate. People are out on their decks. Cool. And they're all high enough where they can see the racetrack from their decks, and so that's pretty cool.
Yeah, so mine's going to be a little bit different because there's a lot of great short tracks around here. It might be a little shocking, but it's just the event and what it meant for my organization. It was being the first race cars out on North Wilkesboro on the rebirth of it. May not necessarily have been the promoter that was behind it, but we certainly love being a part of that. It wasn't just bringing 50 race cars there. It was actually, being there on practice day, the first day that actual cars were there. And my group with, AJ from the Freedom Factory were the ones actually running it because that promoter had no other employees there parking cars. I will never forget the friendship that we made with the Carolina Crate Modifieds down there. Super group, great people. And I guess the other one would be probably Bristol Motor Speedway when we were there on dirt. But it's not to just take from all of the short tracks around here. We have a lot of great ones. So I see Jay Freet has a question for you. If you could go back in time and sit in the stands at any defunct racetrack, what would it be?
Man, what a question. That was a tough one. I think it's a recency bias maybe, but Playland. It's in my hometown. It hosted a NASCAR race and all the other crazy things that you can find in the video. That's called a plug. But yeah, I think I'd have to go with Playland.
I know I wasn't asked this one, but the one I would like to see, and it's just an oddball one, is the 131 Dragway half mile at Martin. With all the names that you have at Kalamazoo Speedway, from Van Sperentak to Orr to Bob Holly, the Berlin guys, Jack Gritter and all that, seeing them there on a Friday or Saturday when they were racing, or a Sunday, I think that would just be pretty cool.
Well, Santa Fe for me, that's something that I miss that track. There's $1 million homes now, so you'd have to knock those back down and take the dirt down a few levels because it was all contaminated, right? So they build up. But that was a fun track. I miss Santa Fe.
Oh, absolutely. So lots of cool conversation here. So like the one video, you put a lot of time and effort in this and research. Before Buju's done doing these videos, what's the one track that you want to do?
One track. That is a great question. Man, I don't know. All of them. I don't know.
Security.
So I a big project that I'd like to do right now, and I've kind of discussed with Andy Jr. about, is I'd love to do a video on Andy Bozel's world record run at Kalamazoo. I think that would be a really, really cool episode. Andy's one of my racing heroes, so that would be a really fun one to do.
Yeah, and how that started back in 1980, whatever, with the rocket car of Randy Sweet.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what started the first world record and got Kalamazoo as the fastest world's 3/8 mile track. And they still have documentation to that to the day on that.
Yeah.
It's funny watching back in the M40 days before the current owners, and even I think Steve Brown there. It got a little testy when they were claiming to be the world's fastest 3/8 mile. They would get a phone call from Mr. Howe saying, nay.
Well, I thought in episode 2, when listening to Playland, I heard Stremme. And I went, there was another Stremme, right? And so the lineage goes pretty far, right? But obviously, thinking of recency, right? Like, I grew up as a kid watching Cindy and Lou, racing, not only South Bend, but then
Cindy was one of my first favorites. I want to get that on the show. Cindy Stremme was one of my, not the other ones. It was Cindy.
Yeah, the car that I sponsor was a Cindy Stremme car, but it was that it was Verdine family car before it was the Cindy Stremme car. But it's kind of like ironic that she was always one of my favorites, and so I remember watching her as she's watching Dylan and Nick happen at the track, and she's bad knees and all going right down the stands to share her advice to somebody, and you're like, she still got it, and she's at the top row. She cleared all those steps pretty quickly, and went all the way down, chasing to make sure that everybody knew what she thought. So I'm like, she still has that, right? So I miss watching her race, but that was one of my favorites is watching Cindy race, and obviously Lou for obvious reasons.
When we ran Grundy County for the Bahama Brackets at the end of the year this year, Cindy and Lou were in the stands on practice night watching Nick and Dylan and Bobby. And I looked over and I said to Derek, "Is that Cindy and Lou over there?" Like I saw Elvis sitting in the stand.
Yeah. Well, and she's really that trailblazer. And I know there are others. Drew posted on the Kalamazoo page today, posted a legend of the zoo, and it was a female driver, one of the early pioneers too, and females racing, right? And so nowadays we're blessed, but still it's a big thing, right? Like when you get women's in sports, a female racer, when sometimes they go, when are they just gonna be a racer, right? Like when is it gonna stop being different? And obviously at grassroots racing you might see it more, but it's like there's a lot of people you can trace back, whether it's South Bend, New Paris, wherever, you can trace them right back to Cindy Stremme, watching Cindy race. And so I don't know if she knows the impact that she's had on so many people, or even she knows everyone who she has made that impact on. But she has a lot of people, both men and women, who love the sport because of what she did in her cars.
And that's just one person in a whole world of other people that these stories need to be told.
Yeah, and that's the exact point to why what Buju is doing is very important, because I'm gonna be honest with you, I've heard of Debbie Nash, but that's a little bit before my time, and I wish I knew more information to put on there. I mean, I know she won a race because that video I was watching the other day, she actually won a heat race. So, but that's why it's so important. That it just seems like our generation, Lewis, has lost the generation of the 80s and 90s. That those guys and ladies that knew that stuff are no longer here. Right. The Ron Verashes are very important. We got to squeeze all the information. I know Ron, who's the South Bend guy, probably has more knowledge than, other than the Jones family. Bobby Jones, I'm sure he still has a lot of knowledge in those guys, but they're not around our track to share it anymore. And that's the sad part. And, for what you do, you have to be very careful what you do with your research. I'm wrong by one small little fact. Social media will let me know. And that's not what my intent was. My intent was to not offend you. And I'm trying my best with the knowledge that I know here. And I know that gets frustrated. Lewis has seen it on the Kalamazoo page. I'm like, you know what? I won't post your guy next time.
Yeah, I mean, even a few episodes that have come out, like the Mottville episode will get posted on Top Row, and somebody will comment that clearly only watched the first 3 seconds. It's not there anymore. yeah, man, we know. Last another 15 seconds. We can get to the story here.
Race, right? That race we were watching some of the comments.
Yeah. My opening line, yeah.
Like beyond that, right? And I was sharing stats with him behind the scenes, like, hey, this may be why, because some of them tuned out, right? That, and it's like, it's kind of important to watch like at least a minute of that, right? It wasn't that long. But that's something that, we watched that, and it's so, I forgot what track I was at, and I posted something and people got on my case. I'm like, I went with what the promoter told me, this is what they told me word for word. And I remember in the comments putting the screenshot, like, this is what I was given to say. I can't help it. It wasn't my fault. It wasn't accurate. It's not in this local area, but I went with what I knew.
And there's so many drivers that are out there that do deserve the recognition, but I want to be careful what I post, or I can't find, like Dennis Verbleski was a big name from Kalamazoo Speedway. I don't have a photo of him. I mean, there's probably one guy that has a photo of Tom DeVette, and I don't know how to get a hold of Tom DeVette. But I mean, Steve Eberstein. I mean, these are the glue guys of the Sportsman, which would be now the limited weights at Kalamazoo or street stocks. And the same thing with South Bend. I'm sure everybody knows who Doug Hanna is, the Stremme family. So many other names, New Parish with the old Grump, Doug Hanna and Charlie Hanna and stuff like that. So I wish there was a resource for that. And when the Mark Times went down, it all went with it.
Mm-hmm. So, certainly, like you said, those guys like Ron is unbelievable. You flip open one of his picture books and he goes, oh, he actually brought that car out on this date and he finished there. And the tech guy had this to say about it. And I don't quite have that photographic memory that Ron does, but I'm doing my best to try and do my part in preserving our sports history.
When you ask Ron one question and it turns into a 2-hour conversation,
I love Ron to death, dude. Ron's the best.
Where the tire came from and New Jersey, and they rate, something him and I talk on my new website. This is not a Mankind cheap plug, by the way, for like a P-pop. This is, but on the new website, I'm making a space specifically for Ron. That's something that it's on my to-do list. And I've talked with Ron about helping him shift his photos over to like my Smug Mug, right? Because right now where he stores them, I'm like, who can see them? Unless they're recent uploads on Facebook, where can you find them, right? And so I said, I'm not going to charge him for it, right? Like Kendall uses my Smug Mug for free. When Liz Fetters was going to be on my team until things happened, she was going to be using it for free. Sabrina Beebe gets to use it for free, right? Like I'm not charging them to use that. I'm paying for the subscription. But when the Rockford crew, when they were going to sell all their assets and get rid of stuff, I called Kyle Adams and I said, I'll pay. I'll take over your Rockford stuff. That way I'm not going to monetize it. I don't care to make money on it. It's going to cost me money to take over. But it's all that would go. That's what 10, 12 years of history gone. And it's like, I tell Ron all the time, when you decide to be done with this, who's going to take it? Who's going to do something with it, right? And so that's something that, that's kind of like a project that we're working towards. Just,
awesome.
Ron has, I mean, I couldn't even imagine a number of photo books that he has, even if it's going to be a rough guess, right? And but it's something that's like, you have these somewhere where, how can we get them so people can find them, right? I don't want to make money on it. I'm not going to sell them or anything but it's preservation, so we don't lose it. Once it's lost, it is hard to find.
Yeah, absolutely. And even as much as I did find on this Playland video with racing from 1915 to 1961, it's still only a small handful of what actually happened there. There's still dozens and dozens, if not hundreds, of races that there's no record of. No idea who won, who ran, who was there, who wasn't. No clue. It's just gone.
The good news is Ron was only 35 back then when the if you guys have any more questions for Buju, put them in here. It's been a great conversation. Been excited to have them. Been actually looking forward to this, and I think this was a great season premiere of this podcast returning. So drop them in here. Keep the conversation flowing. Lewis, you got some bright-minded questions. What do you got for Buju?
Well, one thing that I was thinking, right, is we kind of started the episode, so let's come full circle. No pun on the idea of oval racing, a full circle, right? But
Here you go.
you were a front-wheel drive racer.
Mm-hmm.
You said this year you're going to be getting into like an outlaw style, sport compact style. So how long has it been since you really piloted? Because I know sometimes you jump in the car, but a lot of times you're like a fan in the stands, and obviously a crew member with Davis and all that, flagging at the return of South Bend. You were on the flag stand for that, and they have 7 shows, I think. I'll be honest, I haven't followed very closely any developments there, but that's something that I think I saw 7 shows that they're doing. So kind of give us a preview of your 2026 season and what that's going to look like for you, especially jumping back behind the wheel.
So as far as racing wise, it's going to be a here and there kind of year for me. I had to put a transmission in my daily car, so that kind of took the racing budget took quite a blow there. So I'm still going to be racing. I'll jump in here and there. I had so much fun at Grundy this year. I love racing M40. I want to try New Paris. Yeah, I'm not going to be out of the car completely. It'll just be a little more here and there. I might race my brother Derek's car a little bit. He's been generous with those lately. So as far as racing goes, that's how it's going to be. And then continuing to work on this. I mean, I've had a lot of fun on making videos, and it might even go into more than just documentaries. I'd like to do some like race day type stuff, and not even just me and my own family. Like, I'm good friends with however many racers. I'd love to do it with something like that with them, and traveling to racetracks. There's so much I want to try with the series. So I'm excited to get into that a lot this year. And I mean, we've talked about doing an episode maybe on NCTS and sport compact racing too. I think that would be an interesting one.
Kind of threw an idea of like the 30 for 30, something that kind of does more that documentary kind of style, right? Like those are, I watch a lot of those. Sometimes when I want background noise, I'll turn on like Requiem for the Big East, right? And you watch the one of about SMU Mustangs when they were slapped with all the fines and the death penalty, and now you think, oh, in 2025 they get away with all of that, right? They just needed a few decades in their favor, and they could have done all the things that they were doing back then and not face the death penalty, right? But a lot of those are really cool. So we've thought about, even like 30 for 30, kind of diving in and all that. So I know the one time you guys were at New Paris was the one time I wasn't at New Paris, and I remember protesting that. We're like, the one time I'm not there is when you guys decided to race there, and you were going to surprise me with that. So I'm just telling you now, June 13th, I'm at Galesburg.
Okay.
That one, and I've talked with Chris and Tracy about that one. Otherwise, I'm committed to their full season at New Paris, except for 2 Night of Destructions. One of them I'm going to be at Drew Show at Kalamazoo, and then the second one is a head-to-head Night of Destruction between Kalamazoo and New Paris, so I'll be at Kalamazoo. So it's just 2 of those that I'm missing, but otherwise, the only race date that I'm missing right now is that June 13th. So if you mark on your calendar, do not stand me up on June 13th. You're Galesburg, right? So otherwise, you'll see me there all season.
Oh, yeah, we had a blast at New Paris last year. It was our first time there in a long time. It was really fun.
They are, Chris and Tracy, I know they get a bad rep, with some people, right? It's kind of like the elephant in the room, but, I don't know that people give them a full chance because they know they inherited a reputation, and the owner before them inherited a reputation, right? It's just a lot of these tracks have reputations, right? And it's one of those things that I think if, I always tell Drew, my favorite line that I tell Drew is I used to be the dumb race fan, and I'm not even a smart race fan now, but I've gotten to, thanks to people, I've gotten to be a part of conversations. I've gotten to see way more than I would have ever even expected. Obviously Drew includes me on some different conversations that I get to learn about that I'm like, I didn't even know. Like, I wouldn't know that just sitting in the stands, right? But I know, like, this past year being a part of New Paris even more, what Chris and Tracy, what they've invested into New Paris, it's like, and I won't put the dollar amount out there, but I mean, it's something that it's not all visible, but they really care about that place, and they're really, they want to see it succeed. They want short track racing to succeed. They're doing their part there. Obviously, Night of Destructions, help, with the bottom line, but their Night of Destruction people wave that flag so proudly for New Paris, and they're like, there's no Night of Destruction area that matches what they can do at New Paris, just from not even the competition, but what they do as competitors, how they help each other, the camaraderie. that they have. I'm like, this is like big happy family in here. It's like full house. Everybody's hugging and everything's, everyone's doing all that. And I'm like, I've not seen anything like it anywhere else, right? And I tell people whether they want to hear that or not. I'm like, that's my opinion. That's what I see. Obviously people can disagree, but it's like, find it, then show me, who can do that. And so that's something that certainly I hope to see you around there more. I know one time I saw you there as a fan because I was down on the ground, but I Chris and Tracy, they're doing a lot for that place, and a lot more than I think people see, and a lot more than what they'll even tell people, because they want to see it be there.
Yeah. Lewis, I know you won't share numbers, but I will. So, not on New Paris, not at Kalamazoo, because that's not. I'll share. So, I don't have the expense to keep up a racetrack, but just to keep in mind, when I lease a racetrack, so when I do an enduro, my expenditures, and these are the cheap ones, can be anywhere from about $8,000 to $12,000, depending where I'm at. That's just for the enduro. Now, you move into what we do at Hartford, Kalamazoo, Corrigan Oil, and M40. So my cheapest one, purse-wise, expenses, insurance, all that included, is probably going to be $18,000 before I even open the gate. And I got to have that in my bank account before I even go there and have the cash there. A lot of people don't understand it. These promoters, they got to have $24,000-$30,000. My most expensive one is about $38,000, and that is July 3rd at Kalamazoo. That's fireworks, $2,000 win street stock race. We haven't even booked our NASCAR guys yet. That could be anywhere from free to $5,000 more into that. And that's what these race fans and drivers don't understand. Well, I spent $40 to get in the pits. Well, I spent $40,000 before I even got here, pal. You want to compare numbers, but that's why I wish people would be more respectful to promoters like New Paris, Kalamazoo, Galesburg, Berlin, Hartford. Leah's always raising my rate. Yeah. That's fine. I'll raise my consulting fee. But anyway, no, that's my point is that all these promoters get a bad rap, and sometimes it's justified, but if you keep going down the road you're going to create more business for Buju with these videos, and we don't want that. And that's my point of bringing those numbers up.
Well, so kind of to dovetail off of that, for Buju, obviously you do front wheel drive racing, which, we were talking the other day, is for some people not the sexiest thing out there, right? Like, and so what do you want people to know, even from like a front wheel drive perspective? Like, if you did a Jew show, that you're getting a chance at, maybe $3,000, right? You and I even talked about Motorhead, Miller Mafia, where they have 1,000 to win for the Motorhead, Miller 1,000 for B feature and C feature racing at different tracks this year, but otherwise it's Corrigan the last couple of years. Mm-hmm. So what's something from like even a front wheel drive perspective that, you wish people knew or understood? And even from your Chronicles standpoint, like, what's something that you've learned that maybe you wouldn't have known as a race fan that like promoters and other places have gone through? So it's kind of like three questions in one.
Well, I really hate the notion that because front wheel drive drivers in theory spend less, that they're lesser racers. I've spent more than I should on a race car, just like somebody who has a street stock or a late model has. Just because the car might not go as fast. I think they put on great racing. I've seen a ton of them. I've gone to Florida 3 times to watch Andy series at the Freedom Factory. I love front wheel drive racing. I think we put on just as good races as anybody else. Just because our cars are in theory a little cheaper doesn't mean that it's any less of a race to me. And I hate that sentiment too. We're all in the same pits. We should all be supporting each other, but whatever. Sorry, the other 2 questions.
Well, so to dovetail then on that, right? So you get to kind of be both sides now, right? Like I got to be the 2 sides of, I went from a race fan to this media side, and I've learned a ton, right? Now you get to kind of straddle both sides too, where you're going from the 3 really, because you were a race fan, then you're a competitor, and now you're kind of dabbling in on the media side. So what's something even from like the media side that you've learned that either makes you a better race fan or even a better competitor and race fan?
I think we have a really special community with just the racing world, how everything feeds into everything. I mean, the fans aren't there without the drivers aren't there without the fans, who aren't there without the promoters, who aren't there without the fans, and it all circles back to each other and feeds each other, and it's this big, great community. And I think making these videos has really kind of exposed that. I've made so many new friends just in the short time that I've been working on these, in addition to all the friends I've made in racing as a driver and as a fan. I think we have the greatest community in all of it, not even beyond sports, I think, in any hobby you can have.
Yeah. Well, and there's that loyalty there, right? Like a lot of, I've been doing a lot of research on marketing packages and how to get sponsors and different things, right? Like I put a lot of reading into that. And then I've also at PRI, attended those things. And I think, one of the big things that they point out is just that loyalty too, right? Race fans are very loyal. They feel really connected to their, to their tracks too, right? They're passionate about them. Sometimes in the wrong way too.
Yeah.
I think there's a call at Daytona, right? Like, boy, the internet knew, and you didn't know. Even if you weren't a race fan, you knew something happened on the last lap, right? And so sometimes that dovetails into like the wrong direction too. But Jude, what other kind of questions do you have? Because I know we're getting to about that hour mark.
Yep. No, it just real quick. Where can they find your chronicles on Top Row Racing Media? Do you have a YouTube channel? And if they have any ideas for something to be covered, or they want to give some feedback, where can they reach out to you?
No, yeah, absolutely. Everything comes out first on Top Row Racing Media as far as the Bullring Chronicles go. So you can find that first on Lewis's page. I do have my own YouTube, Buju Bullring on YouTube, Twitter, same thing, Buju Bullring, same thing on TikTok. Those I kind of just mess around with more. The YouTube is going to have more of the real stuff. But yeah, you can follow me there. And of course, if any tips, or you want me to come to your track and tell your story, or you have a story about your driver from back in the day, absolutely. You can email me at bujubullring@gmail.com or reach out to me on any of those platforms. The more the merrier. Send me your stories. Absolutely.
So we got a question from Drew. Okay. What do you feel hurts racing and car counts?
I mean, it's cost, but that's hurting everybody in every facet of everything. It's not just racing or sports. I mean, it's tough out here right now, and finding money to spend on racing isn't exactly easy. And I think that really shows how passionate the people that are still here really are, and you try and grow that base up again, once again.
I'll give you some promoter insight. So back to that cost. My biggest fight has been against Hoosier Race Tire for the last 4 seasons.
Sure.
And nobody will know from Chris Mize that was with us that passed away a year ago. Will know what it took to get locked into that tire deal that we had for the last 3 years to protect the National Compact guys. And American Race is doing some good things by opening the eyes of Hoosier. We will always be a Hoosier series just because it makes sense, but I'm not going to continue to stop fighting that evil empire like I was this week. I don't want to call them evil. That's not the right choice of words, but that's what it feels like sometimes. All these big companies that profit off from racers, if it's shocks, tires, fuel, motor components, we have some great sponsors in Mill Brand Racing Components and BK Racing that are making Ecotech and Honda parts. And the Hondas have so much advantages over the Ecotech cars where Bill Kenny's trying to get them equal to that. And it's just getting outrageous. And it's hard as a promoter to fight that. And now my big thing is, all right, if these racers are creating a living for you guys, it's time for these big companies to give back to the racing. I'm losing that fight right now, but I'm not going to quit fighting until, we get $5,000 points from a Hoosier, or, some of these sponsors like All-Star, they do a great job. They do give back to us. Yeah. These shock companies should be giving shocks for the end of the day. Some of these other companies like BK Racing and Mill Brand Racing Components, these are very small companies compared to these bigger ones, so they don't have the budget, but they're the ones that are giving $100 for fast time, like Dan Rigoni, or $50 David does for our heat race or fast dash. Bill Kenny buys these really cool sick trophy plaques for our track records. These guys don't necessarily have the budget, but if I need $500, those are the first companies that I go to, and they give it to me. US Speedo, 2BG Tune, but you go to these big national companies like Sunoco or Hoosier, and we're just like, hello, nobody's there. And that's the biggest fight as a promoter. But I keep telling the racers, I said, until you guys stand pat and stop pushing the envelope, stop complaining to me about how expensive this is getting, because it's a two-way street. Like,
oh yeah, racers are absolutely our own worst enemy. There's no question about that. No question.
I mean, as a promoter, I can't go back to a Hornet division and say, give me $5,000 for this touring series. We have to have race cars. There's got to be a reason. And finding the in-between is hard. And right now, my big fight is going after these big corporations, trying to get some stuff from them, and they're just not wanting to do it. And we're gonna find out one way or another.
And all that being said, the NCTS pays great when you compare the rest of compact racing, and it's coming up everywhere. But the NCTS payout is very stout, and we appreciate it as racers for sure.
And Drew, do you think people with big budgets that fight for different rules cause a lot of this? No, I don't, because I'm gonna use the Dave Leonards, the Matt Alzes, and the Ray Powells. They don't really want to put all this money into their race cars. They only want to stay competitive, and it's the manufacturers that are doing this, trying to the new 5-star bodies, like for compacts. That was a big thing 2 years ago. People don't really want to put all this money out, but it's the big companies that do, and it's hard to migrate that. Again, for weekly racing, I certainly understand the maybe scaling the rules back a little bit. But when you have a touring series, you have to be different. You can't be the same series that they're bringing. Yes, we do want, let's just say we roll into Kalamazoo Speedway and Matt Alzey's not a regular with us. We do want Matt Alzey. We do want Dave Leonard. We do want Nick Lehman to race with us. When we go to M40, we do want James Trussell. We do want the Charles Anderson, the underdog there. We want them to race with us, and they want them to be competitive, and that's the hardest fight. Nobody has the right answer. You can put the biggest jackass of a tech guy there that's going to do things. The one thing people don't understand is we haven't changed our rules at NCTS in 4 years, and we don't plan on changing our rules for a while. And if we do, it's just going to be a safety thing or something like that. So people have built their cars, and they don't have to rebuild them every year like other touring series, every tracks or stuff like that. So it'd be good to hear your opinion on that and Lewis's, because you got the promoters provision. That's hearing a racist promote and a fan, we'll say.
Yeah, like I said, the point you made about the touring series having to be different is absolutely, I agree with that 100%. I do think that the biggest problem is at the weekly tracks, but I do think they're facing the same problems that you are, as the racers are saying, well, this is out, why can't I use it? This guy's using it at this track, why can't I use it? And I say, okay, fine. And then it just keeps snowballing and snowballing and snowballing. I mean, I'm saying the same thing Andy just said, but racers are their own worst enemy.
Well, sometimes they think, right, like when there's a new driver at a track or whatever, I'll say, remember, no one here thinks that you're NASCAR. And in fact, that might be why they're here to watch you, because you're not NASCAR, right? Like NASCAR, there for a while, didn't have a really great reputation. I'm not quite sure that they fully recovered yet from that, but it seems like it's getting, at least when you look at the stands, it's getting better, right? Like obviously they just had sellout at Daytona, and I know that's a Daytona, but it wasn't that long ago. They weren't selling out the Daytona, right? I think there's a lot of interest on the Michael Jordan aspect. I mean, that's one of the things that I watched the Daytona for the first time in several years, more so because I'm like, I want to see how this goes, right? Like knowing that it just came out of the court battle. But I think sometimes it's when you travel around to different tracks like I do, and you just see the different ways that each track does things, you kind of wonder like, oh, that's like Drew and I, we had an event, right, that we were at, and I went, that's not how that's done anywhere I've been. and I won't say the track obviously, but I'll, Drew knows. And but it's something that I'm like, as a media guy, that was probably one of the first nights last season that I left the track where I was just super frustrated because I'm like, that it just none of it made sense. And it's like, that's not how that works. It's not how that works at all. And it wouldn't work at Kalamazoo, wouldn't work at M40, it wouldn't work at South Bend, wouldn't work at Plymouth, it wouldn't work at Corrigan. Like that would not work at any track I've been a part of. So I don't know why that's working here. But what, that person had a reason.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, and here, this comment right here explains everything about a hardworking 4-cylinder team. Dave Leonard Jr. It proves that you don't need a big budget to be competitive. There's a lot of knowledge with his dad in these cars, and he shares it with all these racers to make them fast. It's the same thing with a bunch of guys out there. I mean, you look at Dave Milbrand out in New York. He'll share anything with you. Bill Kenny with the Ecotech stuff. And that
Like, with his front wheel discussion, we get on to host classes I learned a lot about racing, and I'm never going to jump in a race car, but I learned a lot just watching his stuff.
Pete Doxey is another one that had nowhere near a budget of Paul Biddle and he was very competitive with Paul Biddle. Pete has unfortunately moved out of the area and maybe doesn't race as much, so he's not on it, but he's still, when he comes to a dirt race, he's one of the guys that can steal it. I didn't call you poor. I'm calling you knowledge. You son of a gun. That guy. But no, it's a proof that, you would think that all these teams that roll in that win features that are very well funded, and it's not true. Even if they are well funded, they're still spending a lot of money, just like these people are saying the same dollar amount as the guy in the C feature and the front wheel drives at Kalamazoo as the guy in the A feature to get there, to get in, pit passes, mission work, all that stuff. So
Davis has heard that all the time at South Bend.
but
they're probably experts. You're talking to experts in this case of who heard it all. Especially when you had 3 cars at one time, pretty much racing for the lead on any given night. Usually against each other.
Yeah, there was.
You hear fans in the stands, and I sponsored them that year. Right, that was my first year as media. But even prior to that, when I knew who they were. I'm like, ooh, so you're just talking to the experts right now.
Yeah, and I mean, we got we got accused of just as much spending and cheating and whatever else at South Bend, to your point, as guys running at the front of the NCTS might be right now. So yeah, we've been in those shoes too, just on a smaller scale, I guess.
No, it's because you had a car that worked for that racetrack and a lot of knowledge behind it, and
we figured it out.
From Christian Weinbalt that ran Saturns for a long time, where Derek got one of his cars, to Kenny Richardson, buying the best house cars in the world. But it's just.
Oh, go ahead.
That's just my point is, and that's the same thing in all divisions, from a street stock to a late model. Where money might become more in a late model than what a front wheel drive, because. But at the end of the day, we got to fix racing, and I don't have that answer. And the biggest thing is expenditure, because the promoters don't have any more money to pay, because the race fans don't have any more money to spend for a $40 ticket for a weekly show, because we got to pay $3,000 to win for the top class every week. It's just not feasible.
And at the end of the day, no matter how much any of us spend, there's only going to be one guy that wins anyway. We might as well show up and race. We're going to race with somebody that's around our speeds. Let's just go race. Let's just race. Yeah? Does that make sense?
Well, one thing I don't want to forget, someone did message me. That's why I was looking at my phone. You heard the dinging maybe going on. And they wanted to know where the 84 came from, the number 84.
Oh, I like that question. So the family number is 8. My half-brother's dad, Kevin Sr., long story. So he runs the number 8. So they all took the 8 in their number, 18, 81, 82. And I'm the 4th brother, so 84 was the number. Right.
Yep. I mean, I knew, but how many people watching didn't know?
Yeah.
Plus, you got the 84 right behind you too on screen. So that's when I heard that dinging. I'm like, what is going on, right? And the question was, and I told them you can ask it yourself, but they didn't feel like putting a comment.
So a little shy.
I'm just going to give them a hard time later. Like, you could have easily typed that, right? But it's fine, I can still ask. It's not a big deal. But it was they wanted to know where the 84 came from.
There you go. I love hearing those stories too, just how somebody got their number or why the paint scheme or something like that.
Name of a car is another popular one. Have you named your car?
Yeah, so my car right now is Boogie. The car that got destroyed at South End was Stella. So those were my two. And then in our shop we got Stewie. We've had Patches, Scrappy, the Beast, Elvis. We've had all kinds of car names. We name them all. I love naming cars.
No, and it's just having fun, just like that.
It is.
The nicknames for the cars, the stories of where the number came from, how you got started racing.
That's why I love the sport.
Yeah, absolutely.
The details.
So with that, we are getting close to, we are over the hour now. So it's been a great conversation. We definitely would like to have you back in the future.
Yeah, this was fun. I would definitely do it again. Sure.
And also, we'll leave it up to you. But if you even want to join us as a host of this event and give us some ideas and bring you some guests and, being a part of it, certainly we would love to have you a part of it because you're a part of the Top Row Racing family and you certainly get racing in general. And it's a good person to have aboard to have some knowledge. So
yeah, I appreciate it. I'll be back. We'll see what we can do about that.
So with that, you got anything else in closing, Lewis?
No, other than, again, thank you so much for jumping on and talking about your history and everything else. That way people who might be getting to know you for the first time, right, they can see now why those videos are, where they come from, who makes them, why they're so important to watch too, just for the history perspective. The 8 stories. But yeah, so I mean, that might be an episode of numbers, history of numbers and names and where that came from and all that. But again, definitely thank you for coming on. And Drew, thank you for, when I saw you say that on Monday that you're looking for a co-host, it's like, well, let's see, Top Row already does race day coverage. Top Row now has a website. Top Row does spotlight posts. Top Row doesn't do podcasting. So, that's the, it's a check mark that it's one more way to promote people, one more way to get people out, especially doing it on Mondays during race season. That's my day. I make graphics, so I'm not as deep into editing. By the time Tuesday rolls around, then I'm buried in editing. But so I definitely appreciate, Drew, too. You taking the opportunity to make me a co-host, and feel free to fire me at any time. I don't have the radio voice like Buju does, but
I'm trying to hire us another one so we don't have to do this every week. So, no, but the point is this doesn't have to be compact related. It can be racing related through the entire thing. Yes, we do want to promote the Top Row Racing brand and the national compacts and the Midwest Dirt and the stuff that we do, but it only helps all brands involved and people that if we generate the conversation to racing in general. And I look forward to it, and that's kind of why we rebranded this a little bit. And there might be a night when we only talk New Paris Speedway or Kalamazoo Speedway or Galesburg Speedway or some track in Ohio or Indiana. It's all about having interesting conversations and interesting guests. And if you know of anybody that would be an interesting interview, send them our way too. I mean, that's even the chat, like that. But
I do want to do a quick shout out. I see that we have Camp Krusty with us, and there will be a new driver debuting, this year. So certainly something to look forward to in the Krusty camp. You have Andy in 13, and then I can't remember the number off the top of my head right now. Don't kill me. Oh man, that's gonna bother me. I'm gonna have to go right to their social media page.
We can't all be Ron Brash, man.
I'm so excited, right? Because again, it's someone who's very passionate about racing, and so I'm gonna pop up the comment there. She's gonna be someone to watch this year. Works really hard at school. Is in a boys world, that she's, jumping into, I want to say auto shop, if I remember correctly, the 09 and 19. does a lot of things down. I want to say it's Michigan City, but it's someone who just loves being at the racetrack and wants to be a part of that. So I'm really excited to see what she does. I think M40 is the destination. Don't quote me on that. I could be Kalamazoo. They can correct me in the comments, but I felt like I read it was M40, but that's someone who we're going to want to watch and see how she progresses this year. So I'm excited for that. I just want to do a quick shout out because they're huge followers of Top Row. And since we were talking about compacts and fun, that's a team that likes to have fun, and they're at the track to promote it. And they put some miles to drive to the track too. So definitely wanted to give them a shout out since I saw they were in the room.
You also reminded me, there's another young lady that's going to be racing this year, and that's going to be, I think her name is Chol, correct? Chol Elzy?
Oh, Chloe.
Chloe.
Yeah. M40 for the most part. Matt's not on here, but at your Enduro in January, we actually have a photo of her next to a car because she's about the same size as Christina Rance. And so, I haven't posted yet because I wanted to wait for a little bit of a tease, get to that point. Although I guess we're spoiling the news now. So maybe, but if people don't watch this, it'll still be a surprise to them. But she's going to be jumping the car, but mostly M40 too. Kalamazoo's fast. Buju knows that when Brendan came up and things happened, but it was really fast there. So I think they're not that M40 is not fast, but you can have some mistake time at M40 and still course correct, where Kalamazoo sometimes you don't, even in a C feature, you don't get that, right? You don't even get time to course correct. So I want to say that's the plan right now, is M40 mostly.
Awesome. Well, with that being said, we want to thank all of our sponsors. You saw them scrolling across here and the top tonight. Thank you for hosting on National Compacts and Top Row Racing Media. We will be back next Monday at 7 or 7:30. Lewis, what do you want to do?
7 o'clock, because then that's time before Monday Night Raw, just to be selfish.
we have reason to be done by 8 o'clock.
Yes. I mean, now that you taught me that Netflix, I don't have to start it live. Like, I swear at one point you had to be watching it live, or when you turned on Netflix, it jumped right wherever they were. And then Drew taught me, no, you can go back. And so I guess we don't have to be done by 8 o'clock, but then it's just, again, it gets before people go to bed, especially on a Monday. If they had a case of the Mondays, you just never know with Mondays. So
absolutely. As Drew would say, we'll close with this. Jey Uso, yeet.
Yep. Although he's kind of losing steam, by the way, just so you know. Side note, like, he's not.
Yeah, Drew.
No, Jay. Jey Uso. He's, people are getting tired of the shtick by now. But
I'm not as current as you guys.
they've outpriced me, so I don't watch anymore.
Yeah.
I'm not spending $1,500 to sit in the nosebleeds for WrestleMania, so we're good.
I retired with Shawn Michaels.
No, there you go.
Well, with that being said, you have anything in closing to add, Lewis?
No, that's it. Again, thank you guys for watching tonight. And again, this is our first episode together. So, we'll keep fine tuning. I mean, obviously, if you've watched anything Top Row, obviously it's always fine tuning. I mean, it's never a finished product. You can always tweak something. So, again, reach out to any of us if you have a guest in mind, or if you have an idea. And again, the goal is Mondays around 7 o'clock to get this going.
Absolutely. And I will close with this. We got some really good news on Woody today. They have moved him over to the rehab center. So he's one closer to being home. So thank you to everybody that supported Lewis, Top Row Racing Media, ourselves, and especially Woody in this time of need. And Buju, thank you for joining us tonight. It was great learning more about your projects and the Bullring Chronicles, and we look forward to seeing more in the future.
Absolutely. Sounds like I'll be back. So
again,
close it out. You say the final words, Lewis.
Oh man, I wasn't ready for that. Right. Well, we're 60 or 59 days away from April's, big events, and then it's almost time to turn left and go fast.
See you at the race.
See you at the races.